Nitrogen is all around us in the air. It is a very important nutrient since the growth of all organisms depends on it due to it being an essential component of nucleic acids, proteins, and other cellular components. Our atmosphere is composed of 78.09% of nitrogen in the form of N2. However, this form is unusable for most organisms due to the triple bond between the two nitrogen atoms. So the nitrogen must be fixed in order for it to be used in growth, and this happens by it being transformed into ammonia or nitrate. For the transformation of nitrogen gas into ammonia, there exist certain bacteria that can take nitrogen gas through nitrogen fixation. These bacteria can be free-living or they can form symbiotic relationships with plants or other organisms. There are also other non-biological ways for this process to happen, but those ways have a much smaller impact on the overall amount of nitrogen fixation. So, let's talk about how these bacteria can actually take N2 and turn it into ammonia. The process of nitrogen fixation by bacteria takes place in most areas with plants. It begins by the transition of nitrogen from the air into the dirt below. This transition leads to it getting close to the root nodules on plants that have symbiotic relationships with nitrogen-fixing bacteria, and to the free-living nitrogen-fixing bacteria. The nitrogen-fixing bacteria then begin a process of nitrogen fixation, in which they take the nitrogen that came from the air and turn it into ammonia. This process isn't as simple as that, however, and it takes more than the nitrogen itself to lead to the transition into ammonia. A single mole of nitrogen gas is added to 8 moles hydrogen and 16 ATP. This then passes through an enzyme complex known as nitrogenase. As this occurs, the nitrogenase interacts with ATP and hydrogen to reduce the nitrogen gas to NH3. Essentially, reduction is a process by which electrons are added to an element or compound. In this case, the electrons are added in the form of hydrogen atoms, which disrupt the bonds within the nitrogen gas. The reduction is a multi-step process in which the nitrogen's bonds to themselves are broken one by one as they form new bonds with hydrogens. The nitrogen gas composed of 2 nitrogens with a triple bond thus becomes 2 molecules of ammonia, each with 1 individual nitrogen bonded with 3 hydrogen atoms. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria are essentially one of the most important components to the survival of all organisms on Earth. Without their ability to transform the abundant, yet unusable nitrogen gas into ammonia, the growth and reproduction of the organisms on our planet would not occur. The process of nitrogen fixation is also a part of a much larger cycle on Earth, the nitrogen cycle. The cycle continues from nitrogen fixation to the production of nitrates, and it eventually leads to those nitrates becoming a nitrogen gas again, and the cycle thus begins anew.